Yeah, yes, we spoke about that. The people were not able to detach themselves from the speeches Adolf Hitler held, and speeches lasted for hours without real structure and so on. Butzi Hanfstengel, he was a man from a distinguished family, even studied at Harvard in half American, and he also declared later he went to America and because he had to flee, and he said that at the beginning, when he saw for the first time Adolf Hitler speaking in the early 1920s, he was completely captivated and later practically surrendered himself, becoming Hitler's loyal follower. Yes, Walter Langer, the psychologist, summarizes it in this way. He had the ability to tell the listeners precisely what they wanted to hear. This was Hitler's recipe. At the end, it is a recipe of every politician. At the end, they are telling you what you want to hear. That's maybe a recipe not only typical for Hitler, but he was in this regard maybe very adaptive. He saw that the people, he were in a contact with the people listening and could serve them what they want to hear. In essence, Hitler spoke only about three topics. He had always the same three topics he was speaking about. And the first topic he spoke always in the speeches in the beginning 20s were the November criminals. Yeah, the November criminals. Die Novemberverbrecher. The November criminals who betrayed Germany and were guilty of the devastating Versailles Treaty for Germany. Yeah, as an explanation for the November criminals, the Social Democrats and Jews were blamed for the outcome of the First World War, especially those German officials who signed the armistice on German 11, 1918, who were practically Social Democrats and Jews and this was the big problem of the right wing. Yes, because they formed a theory, and Hitler propagated it in his speeches, that these guys stopped the brave frontline soldier standing in northern France before Paris in the back. Yeah, this was the whole story, and they spread this story. They spread this story, this propaganda story, because there's a theory, because the leadership, the German leadership, had pangs of conscience. In fact, the German leadership, the military leadership, they were the first who saw that Germany had no chance of winning the war, and they were the first to talk about peace. We have to make peace and armistice and so on. Indeed, as early as 1914, after the Battle of Marne, before Paris, and later the Battle of Ypres, near to the French-Belgian border, it was clear to the German general staff that the war could not be won. The second topic Adolf Hitler were speaking was the Marxist threat. The danger that Germany would suffer the same fate as the Soviet Union. That was a danger that existed. It was a real danger. So it was really, people feared that, a lot of people, because on the streets, Spartacists like the leaders were Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, were active on the streets and tried to get a revolution going. And people saw that, people didn't want that in the major part of the population. And here Hitler took the role of the peacemaker, the one who would bring peace and permanently remove the threat from the people, this Marxist threat that coming from Moscow. People feared that the same thing would happen as in Russia. In the end, the majority, as I said, was against a violent overthrow of order following the Moscow Bolshevik model of revolution. In fact, in Bavaria, where Hitler was active, such an overthrow were also ongoing after World War I. There were such we can say, extreme left-wing revolution ongoing. Supporters of such a Russian solution did not even make up to 20% of population. So here also Hitler spoke to the masses like the peacemaker. Then the third theme was the third topic Hitler was speaking always was the Jewish world domination. The fear that the Jewish world in end of the 19th century were working only to dominate all the world. In everything what is ongoing, like World War I, like the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, and every big element are at the end part of the program of the Jewish world domination. This was a conspiracy theory fueled worldwide by the protocols of the elders of Zion. The theory still lives on today in the Arab world, for example. The Jews were blamed for everything what was negative, only because they had a plan to dominate the world. So blamed for First World War, for Bolshevik, and so on. Soviet Russia. The anti-Semitic pamphlet Protocols of the Elders of Zion, let's explain. Its origin and authors are still not clarified today. It is probable a Russian production in which the Tsarist secret service Okhrana was involved. Pyotr Ivanovich Rakhovsky, born in 1853, died in 1910, head of the Tsarist secret police Okhrana, is suspected of being the author or even have written that he has written these protocols of the elders of Zion. Modern historians assume that Hitler was really convinced of the truth of these conspiracy theories. Like we see also today that people can be very, very convinced about some conspiracy theory, which in maybe normal people will say it cannot be possible, you are believing stuff like this. Langer does not see Hitler's success necessarily in the content, so these topics he was speaking about, but like we saw, Jewish domination, Marxists, and November criminals, that it was not the content, but it was the way. It was the way and the manner he spoke and the way he presented himself. His speeches were full of drama. It was like he was like an actor. He would step onto the stage, entering the stage in like a boxing star, like who were up going to an arena, in a big boxing fight, everybody watching. He would begin his speech always very slowly, and as many reported, establish first a metaphysical connection with his listeners, becoming their voice and he the voice of Germany. This is a technique that was new for the time of Hitler using this technique. Now motivational speakers or politicians all over the world are using similar strategies like to get the attention of the masses. It seems as if he was in a trance that he himself was in a state of self-hypnosis. So people are speaking as if something from outside had possessed him. He used everything that motivational speakers today in America, we can say, like teach and offer and say, like how to excite the masses. It was not about the content, but about a feeling you transmit, the feeling like, come with me, come, rise up together, and together we can do everything we want. We only need the will, you only need to try. Around 1920, at the beginning of his career, his speeches in Munich were an experience from which people left and said, I'm full of energy. Yeah, when they left the speech, they were full of energy and of excitement. I would like to note in passing that this was also characteristic of several successful cult leaders. Yeah, for example, the story of the American cult leader Jim Jones, the responsible for the largest mass suicide in Jonestown in South America, where he established like an own town, fleeing from American authorities. And followers of Jim Jones said later, like something like this: while I was listening to him, I was hypnotized. It was also recorded that listeners unconsciously imitated his physical gestures. It is supported also for the followers of Jim Jones that when he made a gesture, the masses made the same gesture and followed him also emotionally. And the same thing is reported for the listeners of Hitler's speeches. Yeah? Several sources claim that this proves the mass hypnotic effect of his performance. Yeah, people considered him, what they thought about Hitler, they considered him diligent, devoted, truthful, and like very courageous. In propaganda, everything was presented with the highest possible superlatives. They tried to present Hitler like that. Every trait had a higher meaning. Even the fact that he did not eat meat. Hitler was a vegetarian. He did not drink alcohol. He did not smoke. Everything had higher meaning. Everything was always portrayed as being in the service of the German people. He had a strong will and resisted every vice, simply because he wanted to, like strong will. I want to emphasize that I have often noted how types who lack self-confidence, like type of narcissist type, make often statements like, I quit smoking today because I told myself I wouldn't do it anymore. It's that simple because I'm strong. So they're emphasizing their strong will, like Hitler did. Hitler's well-known statement was that he did not need a wife. Germany would be his wife. In addition, he presented himself as a friendly, compassionate, ready to help guy and as someone who solved the problems of the ordinary people. Yeah, that is like they perceived him. Hitler handing then there were also these scenes, the propaganda showed to the masses. Hitler handing out ice cream to little blonde-haired girls in Berchtesgaden, like there were the masses like waving to Hitler when he appeared there in Berchtesgaden. It's his residence near to Munich, south of Munich, and then Hitler came and handed out ice cream. Hitler played with dogs, and so on. This is a favorite propaganda props like children, dogs, and so on. We have the dictator as the caring father. But he was not alone. When we see other dictators, they are much time presenting, like with little Charles and so on. We we see standing in the classroom and so on. Yeah, dogs were of great significance to Hitler.